this meeting to order and have Attorney Robinson take the roll.
No.
Who's the secretary?
Vanessa Patterson will take the roll.
Tanessa should call the roll.
Alrighty, Jacob Beach.
Excuse me, really quickly, before you call the meeting to order, could you remind everyone to make sure how they need to respond with their location as well, because we are virtual?
That's right.
I am here in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Perfect, thank you. Janine Brown.
I am here and, well, from Kalamazoo, Michigan, currently in between Reno and Dallas.
Gabby De La Cruz.
I'm here in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Jessica Glenn.
Here in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Angela Graham Williams.
Present, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Marissa Harrington.
Present, Kalamazoo.
Deshaun Houston.
Present, Kalamazoo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanessa, for taking the roll. And so just to explain to our viewers here, as this is our first meeting, we need to get some order and some organization. And as this is a board-led board, we intend to keep it as such. So what we need to do now is nominate someone to take us through this initial meeting as we go through adopting our formal officers. So would anyone like to volunteer for this meeting? I see that smile, Marissa Harrington. I see that volunteer. That
I'll
wasn't
volunteer.
that. Okay, all right, Jacob.
I second Jacob. Yes.
Okay, so I'll volunteer, yeah. So moving on, we're gonna go continue on our agenda with a bylaw discussion with Attorney Robinson.
Thank you, Commissioner Beach. I think Dorla sent you what was a draft. It is based on other bylaws that other city boards have used. If you have any questions, I'm open to try to answer any questions for you, but it's pretty straightforward. There's officers and the powers that you can exercise. And I was thinking about this yesterday a little bit, and this is the one board that actually I hope goes out of existence, that there is never a need for this board to exist again. That may be a pipe dream. I recognize that we had a presentation by the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, and their Civil Rights Commission was first created in 1965, and they're still existing. Hopefully, it won't take that long before there's no need for this board, but that's the goal. I think ultimately is for this board never have to exist. But with that, if you have any questions, I'm willing to field them, and if there's changes you'd like to make, that's okay too.
Attorney Robinson, I did give that document to IT if we want to put it up, if folks want to go through it. If they want to use that as a presentation. Would you like that for? Yes, no, thumbs up? Can you put that up for us? I sent it to Neil and to Andy today. I'm not getting a response.
I've got it in front of me, but I've never tried to share. Let's try it. Well, there are some things that are too important to leave to an attorney.
Right. Neil, can you all put that up as like a presentation?
There we go.
Here we go. Thank you. And
So to get started, does anyone have any initial questions on the bylaws? or any comments? Do we want to go through it section by section? Hopefully we all had a chance to review it before tonight's meeting. Attorney Roberts, I did have one question.
Sure.
I did notice that in the bylaws, there's no language around removal of a board member. Is that something that is typical to not be in bylaws, or is that something we should consider?
It's something you can consider. I guess I wasn't too concerned, since I think this is a motivated group, and I think it would continue to be that. But certainly language could be added if you wished to address if somebody, for instance, habitually misses meetings and the like.
That is in there, isn't that, Attorney Robinson? I was just going to say that there is
Yeah.
language about if you
Yeah, at
have
least that
excessive
portion
absences.
is- Yeah, at least that portion is about missing meetings, but
Correct.
And then also, well, I don't know if it talks about being terminated from the board, but there is specific language about conflicts of interest
Right,
but I guess that's to just preclude yourself from voting.
correct.
Okay.
I was going to have a question about that because I wanted to understand, and I don't know, because here I go with my human resource mindset. I would just think about what's the process for that to happen. I mean, I can understand that there are reasons for removal, but how would that removal honestly take place? And should it be listed so that way that everyone is aware and we act within a correct protocol, if that makes sense?
I would second that kind of thought, because I think I would agree with Attorney Robinson. I think we're all a highly motivated group, and hopefully there's no problems. But I think when forming the bylaws, we should look long-term, and just in case, what is that process up front, so we're not having to develop it when there's an issue. Hopefully it never is.
The question I have is, what is the board concerned about? I found the section we're talking about, section 3.5, regarding vacancies, and there is, if you vacancy due to death, resignation, or disability, and maybe filled for the unexpired term. How were you, and again, if you're absent for 3 consecutive meetings or more than 50%, you're considered to have resigned. So that would operate by just by the bylaw, that you could be considered a resigned individual. And I suppose this board would say, if this person's missed 50%, over 50% of the regular meetings, they would go to the commission and say, please nominate somebody to replace this member who has not kept up their commitment. Do you really want a process in which that individual could, I guess, defend themselves? Or do you want a process where you can excuse absences? And but beyond the absence portion, are there other situations that you would envision where you might want to have some type of due process hearing by the board in order to remove a member?
And that's what my concern was, attorney. And it was just because I've been in situations, I don't know, I'm just thinking, and I've been on other boards, there was at least a voting process or, some type of due process that would kind of occur so that there would at least be a discussion. I don't know. I mean, because we're a highly motivated group and things like that, and I would think that others that would join the team would be just as highly motivated. I guess my biggest concern is just, if things are just listed like this, something could have happened. Somebody could have been sick, but, they're going to recover. They're going to be fine. I just think there are situations where it could happen. And I just think some type of due process or, some discussion should be around that. I feel comfortable with just a little bit more protocol because hopefully we become a tight-knit group and be able to work with each other. I just want to act in all fairness as much as possible.
And I guess that I hear that, and that is a legitimate concern. My only question is, under what circumstances would that process be triggered? That's the first question. Secondly, what does the process look like? Should it be triggered? Do you want for this board to make that determination, or do you want the board to say, ooh, we think we've got an issue here. Let's ask the city commission, which is the appointing body, whether or not they should withdraw that individual's appointment and appoint somebody else?
If I can weigh in here, I totally agree with maybe going into a little bit more detail and having protocol and due process. I just would also like to caution checks and balances. Um, I I just don't want a situation where someone can be removed for personal reasons or conflict reasons within the board. So if we could remove it from maybe our body making that decision and give it to the commission, that would be my preference.
And thank you, Director Harrington. And to echo that, I think it's important that we hold ourselves accountable, as this board is going to be hearing complaints in our community. And I think it's really important that we have a process to hold ourselves accountable. And I think since we are hearing complaints and are going to be an action board, there are, I think, situations where if someone does not operate in good faith or something does arise, and I would echo what Marissa says, I think it should be removed from this board if any of things were to happen. But I think with the design of this board and what we are put in place to do, it's important for us to have a level of accountability and for our community to know that we have a level of accountability, that we are not just appointed and because to me, this board is more than just showing up to the meetings. And I think I think our bylaws need to reflect that.
Those are all, go ahead. I was going to say,
Yeah.
those are all good points, but it goes back to, okay, if you want the commission to do that, then what triggers the request for someone to be removed?
I would say a majority vote, possibly.
Well, I'm talking about what conduct. Yeah, it would be a majority vote, but what kind of conduct is going to be so egregious that this group of individuals would say, ooh, we want one of our members to have their appointment withdrawn?
I think one obvious issue would be if one of the board members themselves were accused of violating any of our civil rights policies or procedures in terms of housing or discrimination. I think that should just be a blanket requirement that we are all abiding by these ordinances and not acting against them ourselves.
Let me be the devil's advocate for a moment. Is it an accusation sufficient, or does there have to be a determination that the individual discriminated?
I would say
personally, I'd say
determination.
determination. Yeah, determination. Yeah. And that they have to remove themselves from voting, of course.
Oh yeah, they would.
There is language
That'd
there.
Be a conflict.
Yeah.
That'd be a clear conflict.
Right.
But I guess my only question is, for just whatever reason, I think that we are dealing with a board of people of integrity. I'm letting you guys know that I believe that fully. I guess my only concern is if in case that does not happen, that we have someone that doesn't act in integrity or does vote and they shouldn't. This is where my concern comes in. And that's why, yes, it does need to be evidence-based. It shouldn't be accusatory, but it should be discussed at least, or something. I just feel a little more comfortable with.
Would their complaint, though, not work itself through the deliberative process under Chapter 18? And whether or not, I think, my question is, let's say it would be a matter that would fall on the board to hear and make a recommendation. In that case, would the board hear that conflict, or would the city attorney's office alternatively be in some sort of be the arbiter, right? Because I think the group itself may have a conflict in deciding such an issue. I also think about removal of a member, and in addition to any sort of discriminatory practice, I wonder too if not just a conflict for a vote, but conflict in like if something about past behavior came up, right? Something that would disqualify you from some other, I don't know,
in some other way. And I'm trying to think of what that might look like, but I guess past discriminatory practice, right? Like not something ongoing or active, but a history of something that comes forward once someone is appointed, which frankly, given the way politics and history has played out, sometimes happens, right? Like it doesn't come to light by the offended party until that person is put into a position of power or public appointment.
I like it.
Now,
I
will that
agree
be,
as well.
will that be based on accusation or will that be based on investigation? Because I
It
think
should be evidence.
we should define that.
Agreed.
I didn't hear someone said something.
I said agreed.
No. Before you said agreed, I heard that, but accusation or
No, I was saying it should be investigative. It should be evidential. I don't think, definitely it shouldn't be off of accusation, because people can say whatever they want to say. I mean, I think we're all aware of that. I just think that, yeah, if there's a serious case that is evidence based, and then yes, we should at least discuss it and make a recommendation if necessary.
okay.
So I guess my next question is, it sounds like we have consensus about an incident or something that has happened either in the present or in the past that might disqualify someone based on what our mission is as a board. But who's making the changes to the bylaws now that we've come up with that consensus?
I'm working on it as you speak.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson, because Marissa, you took my question out of my mouth.
Basically, now what? Okay.
I also would, I think for this board, I think failure to disclose a conflict in hearing an investigation is a severe, like failure to disclose a conflict about any of the parties that we're hearing a complaint against is a very severe infraction. And I think that would be something that could justify removal of the board. If I have a conflict, if I have a direct relationship with one of the parties in an investigation and I just choose not to disclose it, or I forgot to disclose it. We're all human, but I think we know what is right. And I think, again, we have to hold ourselves accountable.
So I have a question about that. I mean, given how this body was intentionally representative of a lot of different areas touching on the Chapter 18 ordinance. I mean, Jacob, you're right. You work for Housing Resources. My day job is at the YWCA Kalamazoo. We are a very small town. We serve a lot of people. And I really personally feel like I need some very specific language about what a conflict of interest will look like, given that. And where I may not have represented somebody directly, like actually, have an engagement letter or a signed retainer agreement, they may have touched YWCA services at some point. And given our childcare facility, given the prevalence of domestic violence in our community, given we're the only shelter in the county, we're going to very likely have complainants who have touched our services. And so Attorney Robinson, I guess this is somewhat of a question for you too, and just making sure that we are very specific about our conflict language. And I'm happy to, do a conflict search and disqualify myself where I've provided direct attorney representation. But yeah, and I don't know if you have thoughts too, Jacob, if somebody has availed themselves of services of HR.
Yeah, so I think.
Or anybody else, yeah.
So I before we kind of move on to conflict of interest, because I think it's all interconnected, is any other discussion around whether we should or should not have a removal? It sounds like we do have consensus around we should have a removal process. Is everyone kind of comfortable with that? And Attorney Robinson is kind of working on that language.
Yes.
I'm looking for nods, and thank you
Yeah.
for the thumbs up. Now kind of switching over to Director Glynn's point, so I am the program director at Housing Resources. So I at least interact with a number of landlords as well as services. I know we all have our own walks of life. Marissa is a real estate agent who has probably helped. So I think for this board, I think having a very, very clear conflict of interest policy, I think in the bylaws, I think to Jessica's point is very, very important. And I'd be open, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not gonna have the language, but I want to make sure I am being transparent and fair, and I think everyone else wants to be, so. And again, there's a difference between relationship and like, I just know you.
You've raised an excellent question, and I'm reluctant to start defining conflict of interest in this context without doing some research. But I understand where you're coming from, and that's probably a good idea to put in the bylaws sooner rather than later, a definition of conflict of interest. And what I would suggest is maybe we put a pin in that and put it to the side for a moment and work on what you want to do in regard to recommending to the city commission to remove somebody, and then perhaps between now and the next meeting, come up with a conflict of interest definition. Or it may even be a conflict of interest policy, but at least initially a definition, because I don't want to do something in 10 minutes that I really should devote more like an hour and 10 minutes to.
So is everyone comfortable with kind of pushing conflict, knowing Attorney Robinson's going to do some research and we'll revisit this next board meeting? Everyone feel comfortable with that, about the conflict of interest definition and policy process, whatever that's going to look like?
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. So I think Attorney Robinson is looking for more clear steps of what we hope to have our removal process look like. So does anyone have any initial thoughts of what that process looks like?
If I may, I've drafted some language, and so I'm going to recite it. I'm going to go slow so you can, if you can take notes while I repeat it, so you have it in front of you. What I suggest is a second paragraph be added to section 3.5, or maybe, and eventually this may morph itself into section 3.6, but for tonight, adding a new paragraph to 3.5 that reads as follows. A board member who has been determined by the remaining members of the board to have engaged in past or present discriminatory conduct, comma, or who has failed to disclose a conflict of interest regarding any matter coming before the board, may be removed by the city commission upon recommendation of the board. So I'll repeat that if you wish. So you can, I tried to read it slow. I'm trying to work in what I've heard tonight was past discrimination or current discrimination and a conflict of interest, or at least the failure to disclose a conflict of interest. So again, a new paragraph would be added to section 3.5 to read as follows. A board member who has been determined by the remaining members of the board to have engaged in past or present discriminatory conduct, or who failed to disclose a conflict of interest regarding any matter coming before the board, comma, may be removed by the city commission upon recommendation of the board.
Any thoughts?
Can I express a concern about that process? So just dealing with the one with the discrimination or the conduct, number one, it's not in there that it would be proven already. We need to make sure that we say it's proven. But do you really want to expose that person in a commission meeting? You just put their business in the street if you take it to the commission, unless you just say, you know, we're recommending them to be removed from the commission and there's no reason behind it. And I don't think that's the normal process. So the question may be asked why. I'm just concerned about that person's privacy, even though it didn't, you know, and what you're doing to their reputation publicly. And I don't think that's your intent. So I just want to, that's just bothering me for some reason, thinking about a personal life.
I think that it could be within the board, right? So there's voting rights. We can all discuss this and discuss the conflict of interest and vote, and then have a majority vote to remove this person based on the investigation that's conducted within the board rather than making it public.
Attorney Robinson, is it within our purview to remove amongst ourselves, because we didn't appoint ourselves? So that's my
point.
Gotcha.
That you make that recommendation to the city commission because they are the appointing body. But to Dorla's point, there would be a vote at this level to make that recommendation to the city commission. As far as putting somebody's business out publicly, that's why I did, in regard to past discrimination, who has been determined by the board to have engaged in past. So you would have ostensibly evidence of a determination made by a separate body, usually by the state or the federal government, that this individual engaged in discriminatory conduct. And now it's become either in the past or more contemporaneously, and you've made that determination. It's a matter of public record, and you can say, oh, you were determined by the EEOC to have discriminated in hiring, or you discriminated on the basis of disability. And that's a determination. Those are public records that you could then use to make that recommendation. In terms of conflict of interest, again, something would have come up. And again, that's why I want to define conflict of interest a little more tightly. But it would say, oh, you can ask the board member, we've been told that you knew this individual, you had a relationship with them of some nature that reaches the conflict of interest level, and you had an obligation to disclose that and not participate in the decision, but you didn't disclose it, and you participated anyway. And that goes to the integrity of all members of the board. And I think, again, because you're not the appointing body, you could ask the city commission, these are egregious circumstances. We are asking you to remove this particular commissioner for failure to disclose this conflict of interest.
I think, Dorla, or Director Bonner, to your point, I think with this being a recommendation that we vote as a board, there will be obviously, I think, a lot of discussion around these incidents, and I want to make sure that they are substantial, they are proven, and at the end of the day, anyone has a right that if they would choose to resign before it gets to that city commission point, they know it's going to happen. If they don't want their business out there, they have an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm just going to resign and part ways. But I think, at least my intention behind this language is not to rotate board members, is that if someone has a significant, that we feel it hinders their ability to serve this community, is the kind of instance we're talking about, is kind of where my thought is on it.
And I would point out that you don't have to put this in the bylaws, but ostensibly, and this is what created the discussion, you want to give that individual due process. So you would put the offending board member on notice of the behavior, whether it's past discrimination or failure to disclose a conflict of interest, and you give that individual an opportunity to know what the charge is or accusation is against them, give them an opportunity to respond to it, and then you would make a determination whether or not there's any merit to going further and in terms of making that recommendation to City Commission for removal.
All right,
So
thank
there's
you.
the due process, while it doesn't have to be in the bylaws, it certainly would be observed.
Is there any other thoughts or feedback on Attorney Robinson's draft language for removal of board members?
Just to clarify, I'm assuming this would all be in the public meeting, but let's say there was some accusation from a board member about discrimination from another board member. Would this due process would we be doing it during our public board meetings? Or would there be like, you would put somebody on notice via email and then they'd have time to respond by the next meeting? Or like, what would be public, what would be private? I mean, I know that our emails are accessible through FOIA, but I mean, I'm talking about like the Zoom specifically.
This would be a public process. Because you're making a determination on this, and that can't be done behind closed doors.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Thank you.
And if you, what I can do is that the language that I quoted to you, you could also maybe removed maybe removed by the City Commission upon recommendation of the board following a hearing on the matter. That would maybe make it clear that there would be a due process component.
And to Attorney Robinson, to Gabby, to Gabby's point, do we, is that brought into public meeting once it is verified, or is it just, can it be a statement at a public meeting and then we dive into it then? So does it rise to a public meeting once that there has been found to be a valid complaint, or is it just?
It rises to a public meeting once you put the person on notice that that you've learned of an accusation, or at least it appears there's demonstrable evidence that they have violated a provision of the bylaws.
But we want to put them on notice just by a statement. So you want to be put on notice until there was some sort of investigation to verify what those accusations were.
Right.
Correct. Okay.
Yes, you have to give the individual a list of accusations, or if you will, a complaint, to use the more criminal parlance, that you're put on notice that in June of 2017, the EEOC determined that you were found responsible for discrimination on the basis of disability. We're going to take that matter up, and you will have an opportunity to explain yourself or call witnesses on your behalf. And then you have that hearing. But you've put that individual on notice, and you've put the public on notice too, that you're going to take that matter up because this evidence has become available to you.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson.
Attorney Robinson, will you have that written narrative available for us at our next meeting? Or perhaps even whenever it's completed in email form? To me, it sounds good, but I'm extremely visual, so I'll receive it better in writing.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So can I say something? So this has the opportunity to, in a sense, I'm going to use this word, it might not be the best. We could almost fish for information. What if it was a past issue or past conduct that happened? You could almost fish for, like some years ago. What do you think that would be wrong for current board members that are serving, if that makes sense? Am I asking that in the right way, that someone understands?
I hope that happened
in the present day. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr.
No, I apologize. To me, I feel like the onus of that investigation is the vetting process with the commission. And I don't know, but I would think as they're going through our applications that they were studying up, and investigating seems so accusatory.
Yes.
So
that's what I was thinking. Yeah. I know. Yeah.
That word, but as they were vetting us for the interview process and turning the applications and everything, the due diligence that they have to perform to ensure that we are correctly seated, I would hope that took place before they even appeared here with us as colleagues. I don't know.
Because what I don't want to see is malicious intent, right? So that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is someone being malicious. And I see that as an issue.
Well, and again, I've tried to craft this so this board is making the recommendation. There very well may be an accusation and maybe even a determination that an individual discriminated in some form or fashion years ago.
Mhm.
I'm going to say like in the 1990s. Since then, they've had an exemplary record, and they may even have disclosed the fact that that they had a run-in, if you will, with the authorities in regard to discrimination. But they've learned their lesson, and in fact, that hopefully would not disqualify them. But it's something that might be able to come before this board, and you can say, yeah, it's 30 years ago, and this individual has been an example of non-discrimination, that they learned their lesson, so to speak. I mean, this is exactly what we're asking landlords to do in terms of somebody's been in prison, and you got to give them a place. You got to give them that second chance.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Does the language need to state a majority vote for a recommendation? Because I think that's what does the board need to have a majority vote to recommend removal to the board? Does that language need to be in there?
That language could be more explicit, but that's what is intended, that it would be a recommendation of the board. The board can only act corporately, and that has to be done by a majority vote. If you want it to be a little more explicit, I certainly could put it in there. The only question I have, and here's where it gets difficult. Is it a majority vote of the board, not counting that member, or is it a majority of the individuals who are present at that meeting? That's when you start getting into majorities, then it becomes a little sticky.
I think you, go ahead, Director Beach.
Oh. Okay, no, after you.
Well, I was going to say, I think that we already determined that the individual who has received the allegation would be eliminated from voting on his or her behalf. So it would be the remaining board members. But what the problem with that is then we become 6, and that's an even number. That's just my only point. That becomes problematic.
Well, again, that's why it's majority. It'd have to be at least a 4-2 vote.
Oh, good point. Thank you. That's right.
There it is.
Right. And it was right there. I didn't see it, but you're absolutely right. So even if it's 3-3, if the motion doesn't carry, it fails
right.
because it wasn't a, thank you. Good point.
Any other feedback or thoughts, questions on this language proposed by Attorney Robinson?
I think it'll be a working document, and as you come, we've thrown a lot at you, Attorney Robinson, and as you formulate the narrative and bring it back to us, I think for me, it's easier to take a look then and then see if we have any more additions. That's how I feel. Again, I don't ever want to speak for anybody else.
Great.
For sure, I agree with that.
Is there any, so we've talked about conflict of interest, and we've talked about how to remove a board. Is there any other items in the bylaws that we feel are missing, or any other items we would like to review or change while we're today and to have this discussion?
So I do have a question, Attorney Robinson, when you were talking about, and we were all talking about conflict of interest and reasons that folks could be removed from the board, I started thinking about our process when we hear complaints. And should that be, I know in the other group I'm with, the appeals board, those sessions are private, closed unless the applicant wants them to be public. But then there's a concern about releasing that information to the public before the process is done. Should there be something in the bylaws that states specifically that we don't reveal stuff that's in a private meeting, just our disclosure of people's information before it's ready to be public?
For sure.
Well,
if that person chooses to be private, they don't want it public.
Well, again, this board is subject to the Open Meetings Act. The Citizens Review Board is, while they've made themselves under the available or subject to the Open Meetings Act, they don't have to be, because they are an advisory board to the city manager. And as such, they don't have to follow the Open Meetings Act. Now, they've chosen to do so they kind of walk in a really gray area of the law. But this board is clearly, because they are appointed board, much like all the other appointed boards of the city commission, you are subject to the Open Meetings Act. CSPRAB is an advisory board to the city manager, and he appoints the members to that board.
So then all of our deliberation, all of this board's deliberation is always public.
Yes.
So we just need to know that, it doesn't, and so it's not a part, doesn't need to be a part of the minutes because that's just the way it is.
Yep.
Okay.
And Attorney Robinson, what about documents then submitted by claimants?
That would also be part of the record.
Yeah, I think that's
Well-
going to be a really important component of the public education piece of this board. It's just making sure the community knows that everything they're submitting, which could, especially in discrimination cases, be pretty private, that's explicit.
Will complainants have the opportunity to request to remain anonymous or under a different name, or?
No,
Because I guess with that in mind, I do have concerns about, is it hindering people who might not feel comfortable having this type of this conversation on a public meeting? And are we deterring people from filing complaints?
well, that's a good
And
point.
might I add too, that there is the provision in the amendment of Chapter 18 specifically about domestic violence. And for a lot of victims to assert this right to non-discrimination, disclosure of their identity could have really significant safety considerations.
So so is there a way for us to allow us to protect complainants, at least their identity, while having these deliberations in a public way? Because I think it is important that they are public, but is there a way for us to protect their identity in that process?
Here's the rub. The individual against whom the accusation is made has every right to know who's making the accusation.
But I think there's
you can't fight a shadow. So they have a right to know who is making the accusation. Now, we can probably use, and this is done in court on occasion, like initials. But the person who's being accused of discrimination has got to know the individual who's accusing them.
And
I think there is a distinction to be made between the accused knowing the identity and the general public knowing the identity, right? And being able to proceed on initials or via pseudonym to the general public is just a far lesser risk than, right? But yeah, I think my suggestion would be, of course, the accused would know the identity and likely would, based on the facts of the complaint alleging discrimination. I mean, my sense is a landlord would know whom their tenant was that they had discriminated against. The general public may not.
Yeah. Well, and it also may be an applicant as opposed to somebody who didn't become a tenant.
Sure.
What I'd like to do, again, this is a little bit of research to see how the EEOC and the Michigan Civil Rights Board handle these matters. Because
Are those public meetings though?
Yes.
Too?
Yes.
They do. Okay.
To see if there's some gray area where we can redact some of and maybe not redact the information, because I understand where you're going, but it's the pseudonym or the initials, because I think that Directors Glenn and Beach make a very good point. We don't want to alienate the very constituents that we were appointed to.
We're trying to help. Right.
Attorney Robinson, given what those and those initials stand for that you keep using, the EEOC, just so our listening body, I got a text, somebody just asked me what that means.
Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It's a federal agency. And the MDO, Michigan Department of Civil Rights. So MDCR is sometimes used. And we also have a Michigan Civil Rights Commission. It's the commission that's the body that is the analogous to this board.
is there any objections to Attorney Robinson, again, doing some research on how we best navigate that and coming back to the group at our next meeting?
No.
Great. Thank you for all this research you're doing, Attorney Robinson. I appreciate it. We all do.
Yes.
I'm supposed to be on vacation this week, but that's okay.
Vacation.
Well, we appreciate you.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson.
Is there, moving on, is there any other areas of the bylaws that any board member would like to raise up or have discussion about? That's my 8 seconds of silence rule, so I'm assuming that everyone has said their piece. So with that, I don't think we're voting to approve the bylaws. We have some work to do on them, but we've looked at them, so congratulations, team. So moving on, voting for officers. So I am the temporary chair today, but as our bylaws state, we need a chair, a vice chair. And Director Bonner, can you help clarify, does a city staff member assume the role of secretary, or is that a board member as well?
So I'm gonna defer to the Attorney Robinson on all bylaw questions.
That's fine too.
Yeah.
I think that's in the ordinance, and I'm looking for the ordinance in front of me. I'm working from home, so my home office desk is a lot smaller than the one in City Hall, so things get cluttered.
While you're looking for that, I have a question. Can you explain the process and how we will start to nominate? Will we go position by position and someone makes a motion and we second following Robert's Rules of Order? Can people nominate themselves? Can you give us a little bit of insight on how you'd like us to proceed? Director Bob or Attorney Robinson.
I have, that's why Clyde, Attorney Robinson's name is on the agenda because this is his expertise.
All righty.
It's part of the bylaws process.
So I'm patient to wait, Attorney Robinson.
Attorney Robinson.
It says that the city manager shall designate someone to serve as secretary to the board. So that's the person who should be taking notes, and I'm assuming for tonight that's Dorla.
It is Tanessa.
Oh, Tanessa, I'm sorry. I
Tanessa
apologize.
is,
So Tanessa should be taking notes. She's the individual who's been appointed, at least for tonight's meeting, to be serve as secretary of the board.
Thank you, Vanessa.
In terms of how you wish to go about choosing officers, there is no one right way. If somebody wants to volunteer and nominate themselves and everybody else willing to let them have that position, you can do that. And if somebody wants to volunteer to be the vice chair and you're willing to have that person do that, you can do it by acclamation. But if there is a contested desire by two different individuals to occupy one of those offices, then you have a vote. And you vote publicly, you don't vote in secret.
I would like to nominate are we ready?
Yeah, I was about to open the floor to nominations for, let us start with chair. Let's start with chair.
Sure. I would like to nominate Director Deshaun Houston for chair of the Civil Rights Board of Directors.
Thank you, Dr. Angela.
I second that nomination.
I would like to nominate Dr. Graham Williams or Director Graham Williams for chair.
I would second that nomination.
I would second that nomination.
This is not how I saw this thing going. Thank you, Director.
Are there any other nominations for chair? We have Director Houston and Director Graham Williams nominated for chair of the Civil Rights Board. Any other nominations? Okay, so.
Oh, wow, this is exactly what we just talked about.
We're gonna have a vote.
If my question, Director Robinson, since there were no more nominations and we've closed the nominations,
Mhm.
if I choose to decline, will it default to Director Houston?
You still would have to have a vote, but yes, an individual can't be nominated against their will.
Board, I appreciate you so much. And please don't take this as any indication of my level of commitment to this board. But I would really love to support Director Deshaun Houston in this role, if that would be okay.
So let's take it to a
Sure.
vote. So all those in favor of Director Deshaun Houston as chair of the Civil Rights Board, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And then all those in favor of Director Gran Williams as chair of the board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is anyone abstaining?
Aye.
So I believe with that.
I mean, nay, I apologize, nay.
With that vote, our new chair is Director Deshaun Houston. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. That was unexpected, but thank you so much. I accept.
So let's move on to vice chair. Now opening the floor for nominations for vice chair of the Civil Rights Board.
I would like to nominate Director Beach for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Director Beach as well.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Okay, so we don't have to vote then, correct?
Actually, I'd like to nominate Gabby.
Oh, we have another nomination, Gabby.
I second that nomination.
I think it would.
So we have a nomination for myself and Director Gab De La Cruz. Any other nominations? Okay.
So there should be a roll call vote. So each member indicates who their preference is.
So going through, I will vote for, I'll start, or just,
Well,
Tanessa,
normally Tanessa would call.
Oh, beautiful. Tanessa, take it away.
All righty. Jacob Beach.
I will vote Director De La Cruz.
All righty. Janine Brown.
She is off.
She's off. Okay. Jessica Glenn.
Director De La Cruz.
All righty. Angela Graham Williams.
Director De La Cruz.
Marissa Harrington.
Director Beach.
And Deshaun Houston.
Director Beach.
Okay.
We need a tiebreaker, right?
Did Gabby, did you vote?
De La Cruz.
No.
Gabby didn't.
I'm voting for Director Beach.
Oh, Lord.
Oh.
So now you do have a tie.
So Director De La Cruz, I will take it if you do not want it. If I will change my vote if that would make it easier.
What do we do in this instance, Attorney Robinson?
Well, the proposed bylaw says you don't need a vice chair if you don't want one. It's always a good idea to have, so you know who's going to, if there's should be an absence for the chair, who's going to chair the meetings. But obviously you've got a tie, and the member who could break it is absent. So I guess the question you can ask for, and this is parliamentary procedure, you can ask for a division of the House, if you will, and then you kind of re-vote, unless somebody drops out of consideration. Now the only problem is if they both drop out, then you've got scrambled eggs. But
I can just say I drop out of consideration. Is that-
You can say that. Would you like to drop out of consideration, Director De La Cruz?
Sure, I'll drop out of consideration.
Okay. So with Director De La Cruz dropping out of consideration, thank you. Director Beach will be vice chair.
Well, I guess you want affirmation of the rest of the board.
Affirmation with the rest of the board.
You can ask for a voice vote if that's acceptable.
Voice vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Can I just throw a wrench in this for a second?
You can.
I
Wrench
do
away.
think on the Civil Rights Board, it would be nice to have two different sexes represented in some sort of officer role. In addition to having the really kind of amazing perspective Director De La Cruz that you have, and the ways that you've already lifted up some issues in our training. I think you would be fabulous in that role. And so I just want to put that plug in publicly before further affirmation is made.
Thank you, Director Glenn. Well put.
So I don't know if so I would be happy, because I think Director Glenn raises a very good point. I would be happy to rescind myself. I don't want to go this back and forth though. So Director Cruz, it is up to you, because I think Director Glenn raises up a very important point. And I think it is important we consider the makeup of our officers and what that means. But I also don't want to put a vice chair role on the board on your plate, because that is also another level of commitment.
This probably complicates things, but I don't know, if we want to revote, if we can do that, then that's fine. I'm happy to be vice chair. So I know it complicates things, but we
So
can
why
all,
don't we call for a revote? Tanessa, can you roll call?
Okay. Yes. Okay, Jacob Beach,
Director De La Cruz.
Janine Brown is not here. Gabby De La Cruz,
I'm voting for myself, De La Cruz. Sorry.
Jessica Glenn,
Director De La Cruz.
Angela Graham Williams,
Director De La Cruz.
Marissa Harrington,
Director De La Cruz.
Deshaun Houston.
Director De La Cruz.
Alrighty, thank you.
So with that, Director De La Cruz is our new vice chair. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so our officers are Director Deshaun Houston as chair, Director De La Cruz as vice chair, and then Tanessa as our secretary appointed by the city manager. So thank you all for accepting this extra role and responsibility. We're excited to have you serve, to see you serve.
I have a quick question. Have we addressed, or did I miss it, how long officers' terms are?
1 year.
Thank you.
And then moving on to setting meeting dates and times.
Well, at this point, Director Beach, you should hand the gavel over to the
Fantastic.
new chair.
Thank you, Director Beach. Good
Thank you.
job.
There you go. Director Houston, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. You did a good job. You did a great job.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So next we'll go over, we'll start to review Chapter 18 and Chapter 18A ordinances, and we will make sure that everyone understands that or have any additional concerns or want to add, or, well, we can't add anything, but any additional concerns or anything that they felt that was missed when reviewing these ordinances. So we will open up the floor for that.
May I interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
Did we set meeting dates and times?
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. I moved right ahead. Sorry. Yes, let's go ahead and start talking about setting meeting dates and times. Excuse me. I'm so sorry.
So I'm going to give you an update. I was hoping that by tonight I would know what dates are available. And I have not got that clear yet. We have a great number of boards and commissions. And so hopefully within the week, I will send you some dates for you to select from, but I want it to be settled and not jumping around. So hopefully I will have that for you before the week is out. Okay. And it would probably be 6 o'clock though. That is the time. But like I said, I'm amazed at how many meetings go on at night that are publicized in the city. So I apologize for not having it. It was my intention, but definitely within the next week.
Okay.
Dorla, do you have a tentative date for December?
I don't. December is really hard. That's what I was trying to do, and then realized I wasn't looking at the long term because I was trying to get us in December. So I apologize.
No worries. With that, I wanna ask, is there a specific a specific day of the week that works better for individuals than another? Mondays, Tuesdays, is that something that is on your agenda, Director Bonner?
Well, and like I said, I'm trying to find the best open day.
Oh.
Because of the calendar.
Mhm.
Well,
You know, it'll be the most of our commissions meet once a month, other than the city commission, but most of our other boards and commissions meet once a month. And I'm trying to find one of those. It's usually Tuesday through Thursday, not many Monday meetings because that's the city commission meeting. And
Foundation for Excellence. It's Monday as well. Yeah.
And so I'm trying to find one that we can be consistent so we don't have to hop around, because that's not good for any of us. It's definitely not good for our community who wants to follow this process. I thought it was close, then I got the rest of December's calendar and found out I wasn't nowhere near close.
Okay. So we'll save that for the next meeting.
Well, you will hear about it before then, so we can publicize it. You'll hear about it before then.
And what will have to be done is the next meeting will be called a special meeting, at which you need to adopt a regular schedule for 2021, and that has to be posted 10 days after the meeting, that when you adopt that schedule. So in order to comply with the Open Meetings Act. So you can still do it because you've not created a schedule of regular meetings. The next meeting, you're going to leave to Ms. Bonner to find a time when it works for everybody. And we'll call that special meeting can be called with 18 hours notice. At that time, we can hopefully finalize the bylaws and adopt a schedule of meetings for 2021.
Okay. All right, well, we'll just keep moving right along. We'll have some discussion around reviewing Chapter 18 and 18A ordinances.
And so I added this to the agenda for tonight, as the chair Houston said, if there are any concerns, any questions. It is a lengthy document. I did not think it wise for us to go through the document for time's sake, because I know our bylaws is our primary focus for tonight. But if there are any concerns, any questions, that's why we have Rebecca Kick here, who is Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, who helped write this ordinance along with the city attorney and myself. We have the vice mayor here as well, who was integral, or who was the catalyst to getting this going. And I just want the opportunity to give you some time. Like I said, this is a document that we are going to have to study regularly to understand it and digest it. But it is the basis of our work. So we need to make sure that everybody does understand it and can articulate what it is, because that is going to be part of your ongoing responsibility, making sure the community understands it. So tonight, if you have any questions or concerns, even if we don't have time to get through we can get through all the answers and address it. We can make sure it's on the next agenda, so we can spend more time talking about it. Attorney Robinson, you want to add it, or Director Kick, you want to add anything? Vice Mayor, why this important? Why this conversation is so important?
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Okay, so that's why we at this point, Chairman. So it's Chair. So it's up to you. So back on you.
Anyone, any questions, or we're good on that?
I have a quick comment. I'm just trying to find, I mixed up all of my papers, so I'm trying to figure out where it is. Oh, okay, here. Nope, that's not it. Sorry. It's in the duties and responsibilities of the board. And
As she's preparing that, just forgive me, Vice Chair Dela Cruz, is there any way that we can show it on the screen? Because I'm like toggling between my phone. Can we share it on the screen? Because I'm toggling trying to find it in my email on my phone so we can follow along. Please and thank you.
I think it's here. Well, it says that we're going to review and analyze conditions, practices, attitudes, policies, and other factors within Kalamazoo that contribute to discrimination impact and further inequities, as well as evaluating the impact of anti-discrimination efforts. And that's 1819 duties and responsibilities of board part, where is it?
Part C.
And so this might have been in a different file or a different piece of paper, but I don't remember if it's this one or not. Does that mean that we're going to be looking at other programs in the city and analyzing them as this board and checking to see if they have been discriminatory or if they could do better? Or are we just going to be focusing on like, well, I mean, I guess we would be focusing on everything because we're the Civil Rights Board. So like, if we're looking at past discrimination, just like in the city, are we going to have a process to do that? Like, are each of us going to be in charge of looking at some sector? I'm not sure who the question's for. Sorry.
Well, it's if I may, it's a question of process and what this board wants to do. And again, as long as the city commission says it's okay, you're all right. And this language it's been in our ordinances in the past. So this is not necessarily anything new. It's just that we now have a board that is going to be empowered, if you will, to do this analysis and bring a report to the city manager and the city commission for proposed action.
Thank you.
So there, I can see people or residents or organizations coming to the city commission with an idea or a plan or a concern, and the city commission says, "Ooh, we'll give this to the Civil Rights Board so they can hold hearings on it, they can gather evidence, and then they can bring a report back to us for suggestions as to what we should do going forward." Because I don't think, as I indicated at the outset, remember, this board is only going to be focusing on acts of discrimination that clearly fall within our ordinance and are not otherwise defined at state or federal law. Those, we're not going to be duplicative of those efforts. So if there's a discrimination on the basis of sex, a discrimination on the basis of disability, discrimination on the basis of race, that's all going to go to the state. It's our unique forms of discrimination that we've defined locally that don't have a parallel provision at state or federal law that you're going to be looking at. I would hope that there's not going to be a whole lot of cases that fall within those categories.
Attorney Robinson, what about on matters that are referred to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights or EEOC and don't necessarily get authorized for investigation, or they're investigated and there's no finding of fault? would a complainant be able to avail themselves then of the secondary remedy of bringing it forth to the board?
No. I mean, it's like, I've lost, I mean, this happens all the time. And I think Ms. Glenn, you're an attorney, so I've lost in state court. Now I'm going to make a federal claim out of it. You know, a federal court's going to throw that out. So you had your opportunity in another forum. It's the same complaint. We're not going to hear it. So the same would be the case here. You had your opportunity to make your case before the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. They found there's nothing to it. We're not going to reinvent the wheel here in Kalamazoo.
So then to clarify, Attorney Robinson, when it says that we review and analyze the conditions and et cetera, that's just for complaints? Like it's going to be by case, or we can look at the system?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question, and I may be asking a question that's already been answered, but I need clarification for my own brain. So I understand that someone should go to the state for complaints about things that are discriminatory under federal law. What if they prefer to come to us? Do we just kick it to the state?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's a question of not having the resources. We're not trying to, we're trying to fill a gap that exists under state law. As long as they're doing their thing, and there's no reason to believe that the Michigan Department of Civil Rights is not doing an adequate job, there's no need for the city of Kalamazoo to duplicate that.
Sure. Thank you.
I just want to jump in and say really quickly, just to go back to what Director Bonner was saying, the board, you know, this board will be responsible for, you know, what direction you want to take it in. And so that was one of the beauties of having this, you know, be led in this way. So the questions that you're asking are great, but amongst yourselves, what do you want to do? And how do you want to do it? And so that's, you got to lean into yourselves for some of these things.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. That was good.
Yeah.
And add on to the vice mayors, when as staff to the board, I'm your support. But as you lean into what you want to do, then we develop policies and processes around what it is you want to do, so we can be consistent and we can defend our actions. So, you know, there will be, you have your bylaws, and then you have, for lack of a better phrase, a handbook that is developed as we go along, depending on what role you want to take. You know, a major part of your responsibility will be letting the public know that you exist and why you're here, and getting people comfortable and confident in the process, so they will file a complaint if they feel like they've experienced discrimination. That is a major function of the board that we would need you to help to do, and we will support it. But it really, that is a major function, that education, the community education. So people will follow through, and that's the gauge, and we'll know where we are and what we need to do. And even with this ordinance, I think it's an 18-month look back that we kind of evaluate. Did it make sense? But a lot of that is going to rest upon how you all handle your responsibilities. You know, so that's one thing I want you to consider.
Thank you, Director Bonner. Do we have any more questions for Attorney Robinson that digs into Chapter 18 and Chapter 8, or Director Bonner, that may not be clear? I'll use Director Beach's rule, 8-second silence. Seems like
I'm just thinking, you know, about the whole thing, and it's all so new, and it's all so much, you know, a couple of us are attorneys and the majority of us are not. And to me, I'm sitting here in this space reassuring myself that as we work the process and as we hear discriminatory complaints of discrimination, it will become more real and clear and crystallized to us, because so some of the things I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I should be asking. I certainly I have lots of questions about lots of different things. But I just want to encourage us as board members that as we grow in the process, you know, the fluidity of the process, I think organically we will start to, it'll just start to crystallize to us. Because I that's why you got the long pause from me, because I'm like, gosh, I don't even know where to begin.
And
It's
My heart's in
okay.
it, I got
You
the
know,
passion, but I am not an attorney.
yeah.
So I just look forward to the growth that I know was just going to come with experience.
And you know, a suggestion for future meetings is that you could break this ordinance up and we could talk about a piece of it at each meeting.
and
You know, just to have.
I would prefer that, please. Thank
I
you.
love that idea.
yeah,
Because it is a lot. You don't know how many times I read it. Every time I read it, I see something new, and I have
Sure. Yeah.
because it's a lot of document. So that could be something, if you know, that we can do.
Mhm.
Okay.
and I think that
and
lens
Right.
is important too, Director Graham, because I have looked at this ordinance lots and lots of times. And I think our community is looking for that guidance and that clarification, because it is, and so when you're not in it, so I think your perspective, I think, is welcomed, and that opportunity to grow, because I think that's what we're here to do, is make it real, because it's a lot.
Yeah, and we're going to be dependent on you, Directors Beach and Glenn, because you are the legal minds and the housing authorities on this. At least, certainly I am. So, but thank you for your validation.
I
Chair,
also wonder, you know, there are, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Director Kick. I know you've been trying to say something.
I just wanted to be able to say that if there's anything that I can do, because I have, you know, rental registration in my house, you know, building inspectors, housing inspectors, whatever we can give you from our side too, like Director Bonner was saying, you know, we can take each of the chunks of the ordinance, but how can we be really proactive? You know, like, why did Vice Mayor Griffin have to bring this to your table to begin with, right? Because it was like the community needed to have a bigger voice, because staff doesn't have time to be proactive about things all the time, right? But if we have you in place and there's a possibility where I could start presenting, you know, housing policies or other background materials to you as a board, and we could start to be proactive, that could be just an amazing, another amazing step for us. And especially as you, as Dr. Graham Williams was saying, as you hear cases, where are they coming from? Okay, and what do we need staff to bring us? Why did this happen? And then what could we do to kind of reverse and get back on path again? What would we change once we hear something? So I just wanted to offer that up, that if there's anything that pops into your head and you're like, we need to hear from Director Kick, please bring her staff, you know, have her present on this, you know, call on me anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, also, in addition to the Department of Civil Rights training we had, I do think it would be really worthwhile to hear from different organizations or legal service providers who handle discrimination cases, and hear about some of the cases that fall outside of the scope of that jurisdiction, or the jurisdiction of the MDRC, or perhaps aren't necessarily protected class, or where this ordinance now covers people, right? Because the truth is that around civil rights litigation, you know, there are some gray areas that this ordinance could cover, and really move the needle when it comes to enforcement of civil liberties of a lot of our really vulnerable community members. And so I'm thinking of Farm Workers Legal Services. I'm thinking of the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, who are right here in Kalamazoo and filled with really brilliant litigators, in addition to perhaps some folks from like the ACLU. So just building on, you know, the foundational training that we were given the last week, hear about some of the legal challenges that these communities have made, and what this ordinance might mean at the municipal level.
So that's great. So Commissioner Glenn, I think that you and I should get together and make a list, and you give me contacts and we can work on that. Because I think education is going to be key for our effectiveness. So if anybody else has any folks that you think we should bring, you know, communicate that with me and Tanessa, and so we can start that. That should be fine. I think staff, Attorney Robinson, those, we shouldn't have a problem with that, right? Is there anything else I have to do? Okay, I just want to make sure we do it right so I don't have to undo it or change. So great, thank you for that. Thank you so much.
Any other? Second rule. All right. That might not be mine. All right. So we will move on to discussions around fair housing training and civil rights training, and open up comments, questions, and concerns around that. I do want to say, Director Bonner, I do not recall if those trainings went out via slide. I think that you had correspondence, but I didn't see anything. But I think that you're still trying to get some.
Yes, we have not received them yet, so
Right.
you will get them. So you're correct, and I think Commissioner Glenn was a perfect segue into that conversation. I just wanted to know basically what she was saying. Is there anything that further we can do for training? That was a lot of information. I mean, we have some in-house experts, like Attorney Robinson is a wealth of information. But is there anything else? What did you think about the training? And is there anything else other than what Commissioner Glenn had brought up that we should continue to do? And
I've learned.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Director Glenn.
No, I said that was a question, so I don't want an 8-second rule.
I enjoyed them. I learned a lot. I thought that the presenters were engaging. I particularly liked the first. I mean, I liked both of them, but the first one really gave me so much to think about. I think, you know, you all, the city, has done great with just providing us with baseline knowledge. Not just the ordinances in writing, but the two orientations. And I love Director Kick's accommodation that she's offered all of us, that as we move through the process, we will have questions, because, you know, as it comes forward, we will, I expect that I will need the help and support, as we very frequently turn to Attorney Robinson. So thank you again, Director Kick, for always wanting to avail yourself and your team to us. We will certainly take you up on that. But I enjoyed them both, asked a lot of questions, and felt like they were really committed to their work, and really committed to seeing that we were understanding from where they were coming, and that we didn't have to recreate the wheel. That was really important to me.
I would like just to echo what Director Glenn said, of learning about all of the other organizations that hear cases and support cases, because I think right now, for us as a board, it's really important for us to understand where our lane is, and what is where is the most appropriate for a complaint to be heard, and to have that knowledge. So the immigration center and things like that. So really learning more about where else people can get directed, and are we the right place for someone to land? Is in front of us the right place for someone, or is it something different? I think is really important. I think their trainings are great. I think there's always more trainings that we could have, but I just want to echo that.
Do you think that for a while, you know, this thought comes on my mind, and I know that it might be time consuming, maybe to have them come maybe to another meeting once a quarter, possibly, just for memory's sake, right? So I need to hear that probably a couple more times before I'm actually able to receive that kind of information, because it was quite a bit in a very short amount of time. What do you all think?
I think
I agree. Yeah.
good idea. I think once we get the slides, I'll probably like remember or like retain a lot more of the
Yeah.
information. But I think the trainings were great, and I'm really grateful to have had them.
I think just a check-in and refresher,
Mhm.
for me, a lot of the information I know already because of my job. But there were also some things that were lifted up that I didn't know because it went into a little bit more detail. And again, I agree with what's already been said in regards to it's a lot of information to take in at once. And it has happened at the very beginning of our tenure. So having these additional trainings that will give us some perspective around where we fit in specifically in regards to this work that's being done here, and then now let's compare that in a few months to let's have a refresher. I think it just as we're in this learning phase, right?
Right.
I think it would be really helpful.
Okay. All right, anything else? Okay, so we will move on to citizens' comments.
So that is IT. Do we have any citizen comments tonight?
At this time, there are no citizens' comments out there. Hey, if I could throw in my own citizen comment, as I happen to be a citizen here, I am actually very happy for the meeting that you're having now. Very happy about the ordinances that were put in place and how things are going. As a queer trans woman who also happens to be a city employee here, very excited that this exists. I wish it didn't have to exist that this board is there, but I am happy that there's a voice that will help in protecting people who fall under a little less protected category in our state. And I'm glad our city has these protections in place. And I look forward to seeing everything that we can accomplish together to have this kind of a voice. So thank you. And there's your citizen comment for the evening.
Thank you. That was
Thank
an
you.
awesome
Yes,
citizen's comment.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I guess we'll move right along. Does any of the board members have any miscellaneous comments?
I just want to congratulate our new officers. I wish you all the best. We are all here. Certainly, I'm here behind you to support. I have a lot of board leadership experience. So if there's ever anything I can do to support you all, I'm just excited about how you're going to lead us and the impact that you're going to help us all to make in this community. So thank you for accepting your nominations, and kudos and congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Angela Graham.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I just in general want to say I'm very honored and privileged and humbled to serve with all of you, and am really looking forward to making an impact with this team of people.
Thank you. I have to say, you all surprised me, especially Dr. Angela Graham, because I did not anticipate this at all. I wanted to do a lot of watching and listening, but I will say that I'm very honored, and thank you so much for your kindness. I look forward to, in any way possible, to lead and be stretched any way I can to figure out how we can best make strong impacts in this community, so that people don't have to experience discrimination. It's not right. And so I'm looking forward to all the education and making sure that we have things on the books that people can look forward to and feel comfortable with as we move and journey through this all together. And I'm looking forward to all the support and all the members here that we can, journey in this together. So thank you so much for your time.
I think it has to go. I just want to make sure it's said to our the city staff, Vice Mayor Griffin, Director Kick, Director Bonner, Attorney Robinson. This is a very special time in Kalamazoo's history. I am honored to be a part of it. I see it every single day in my life, in my work. And for us to take not just saying discrimination is bad, but to make change and to put processes to protect our vulnerable community members and to serve our community is great. And this was not an easy lift to get here. We get as board members to now get the yay, we're here, but like I know it could not have been an easy, I know it was not an easy, and it was a long journey to get here, and there's a long journey to go, but this is, I hope you guys can take in this moment, and thank you for letting us be a part of your work, and just thank you.
I would
I would just like, go ahead, Director Davidson, or Vice Chair.
Thank you for the nomination and for voting. You probably noticed I'm trying to get out of the reluctant leadership style that I have. I do have a lot of passion, and you probably noticed from our trainings. But I just wanted to address the public. I'm not sure how many people are watching this stream, but I just wanted to say that in advance of any of the complaints or any communication that you guys, sorry, not you guys, that everybody, the community sends to us, I really want to thank you for the courage that's going to take, because of course here we're discussing all of the details and the nitty gritty, but it takes such a strong force of will to even bring that up to begin with, because oftentimes dealing with the state and, you know, commissions and all of these, I say this from personal experience, it can be a very demeaning process. And I'm sure Director Glenn and Director Beach, you've probably observed this with your work with a lot of the marginalized community. And so I'm here to really listen, and I'm working really hard for everybody.
I wanted to say to Directors Kick, Director Bonner, Vice Mayor Griffin, Attorney Robinson, this is such a labor of love, and it is really a privilege to be a part of this board and to see your work come alive now. And in this, I had a question too, for feedback from the community, knowing how broad the scope of this board could be and the potential it really has. In addition to the public comment period, is there a way for the public to submit feedback to us by way of written comments or to provide any thoughts that they may have on the body of work that we could take on?
Rebecca, is the site hello at Kalamazoo City? Is that what it is? Hello at?
Yeah, it's
right.
where you can, Neil and our IT has set up a part of the website where you can do comments about anything to the city, and it's hello@kalamazooCity.org is the email. And so that way he then shepherds those emails to us, who kind of take them on to their, you know, their next home. So that's where Dorla and I would get those emails to be able to bring them back to you. If someone said, gosh, you know, I'd really like to see you guys cover, you know, this topic. Yes, absolutely. That could be really phenomenal to have people bring something like that to us and then watch us discuss it and figure out its journey, its pathway, the same way that we found Fair Housing's pathway, right? Yeah.
And those things will be shared with you all as well. It won't just stop with, it'll come to me and then it'll come to you all because it's about your work.
I have a question in regards to the emails. What's like the etiquette with the emails? Because I know that our meetings are public, but let's say I had like I had read some article that had to do with something to do with our work. Can I submit that to everybody through email? Can I send that, or do I wait for a meeting to send that, to talk about that, I mean?
Attorney Robinson.
That's an excellent question. And where it gets tricky is that when you share information and somebody responds to it and they hit reply all, you've violated the Open Meetings Act, because now it is a discussion between two members and there's a quorum of a constructive quorum of the body on that email. So my advice, and other municipalities have gotten into trouble doing that. So my advice is, if you've got an article that you want shared with everybody, submit it to Dorla, and then she can make that that dissemination of that as part of the meeting material. So that is a public document, and then everybody can see it, and then individuals can comment on it at a meeting, or if you want to comment privately, you can do that, but just don't send it to everybody, because then you're going to get into trouble.
Attorney Robinson, do you want to weigh in a little bit on social media as well, and how that also can apply to social media, being that it's a public setting?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Vice Mayor. Again, the same thing holds there. If you have I don't do social media, so I'm speaking from a little bit of a point of ignorance. My wife does a little bit, only with some family and friends, but I stay away from it. But that said, right, if you are a group and you're all friends with one another and you post something and then you start responding to that post, that's the same thing as trading emails. It's gonna be a violation of the act. And that is unfortunately, it is a criminal offense. It's a misdemeanor, nonetheless a criminal offense. Now, again, there has to be an intent to violate, but again, you're presumed to know what the law is too. You can't say, well, I didn't know. Well, as a public official now, as a member of a public body, you've got an obligation to know what those parameters are. So I caution you, just don't share things through email, through social media, because that can create, and the other problem it does, well, I think it probably would be excused. I don't know that the county prosecutor would necessarily prosecute it. It becomes the story of the day, and then it brings disrepute upon you as an individual, and again, on the board as a whole. And again, this is not something you want for this board in particular, because there are people out there, unfortunately, who don't necessarily agree with the work that this board's going to be doing. We've already seen some of that in terms of the public comments that the city commission dealt with in adopting this. And so I don't want to give any person an opportunity to denigrate an individual member or the corporate body of this board, because the work that you're doing is very important.
So Attorney, go ahead. Can I suggest that we put Open Meetings Act ruling and processes on our next agenda? So let's see in the faces, so people would know what that means and what it entails. So we will make sure that we cover that.
You mean the next 3 agendas?
However long.
Yes.
And Attorney Robinson, I have a clarifying question. So the Open Meetings Act is violated, and again, I realize we're going to get into this now in subsequent meetings, but the Open Meetings Act is violated when there is a quorum of the board convened, right? Whether that is virtually or through email. But what is the rule of thumb about individual commissioners emailing each other?
Well, again, that gets tricky. If it's just conversations between a couple of individuals, that's all right. But when you say, well, I spoke with Chair Houston, and he said this, and I'm now talking with Commissioner Beach, and he said that, and then you went to Mr. Harrington. And then so it becomes a round robin, if you will, discussion, even though none of you were together or in the same email thread. And again, depending on how you view it, courts have said that is a round robin type of way to avoid the act. Other courts cases have said, well, you know, we don't expect it to be nuns and monks. The expectation is you're going to talk with your fellow board members, as long as you do it in an appropriate fashion in terms of not attempting to, it's one thing to say, well, this is the way I feel about it, as opposed to trying to convince somebody of a point of view. Interestingly enough, the cases where this comes out the most usually involves a board of either a city council or a village or a board of trustees or township board of trustees trying to get rid of the village manager, city manager, or a township manager. And somebody on the board says, I'd really like to get rid of Joe. What do you think? And the courts have said generally that's okay until you really go one step too far. Where that line is not necessarily easily defined and really a bright one. So you have to be careful. It's as I oftentimes advise members of a public body, got to be like Caesar's wife. You've got to be no suspect, because the minute you leave that door open, even though it may have done something very innocently, the fact that it doesn't look good, again, brings the opportunity for people to point the finger.
Thank you.
I'd just like to leave a comment, if I could, just really quickly before we get ready to wrap up. I'm not a voting member of this board for the public as they're watching. I'm just the liaison as a member of the commission. But I'm having a huge moment right now for this board to be seated and this meeting to be taking place. Been a very long time in the making, and I'm so happy to be in this space and in this place with everything that we've gone through individually and collectively, and what has been 2020, to still be in a space and a place where the city has decided, regardless of what's happening at the federal level with protections, that they're going to continue to stand in that space, and then to have this pass. And for us to be here in 2020 in the midst of this chaos, I'm just so thankful for everyone that's on this board. For those of you that I know and those of you that I'm getting to know, I know great work is getting ready to come out of here. So I'm very full right now, and I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I know you all have a ton of work that you're doing anyway, but making this a priority. I'm thanking you for myself, and I'm thanking you for people who can't tell you thank you right now, but thank you. And Director Kick, Director Bonner, and Attorney Robinson, just thank you for all of the work. And thank you to Neil and the person who's also running tech. I don't see you on here, but who left a public comment. Thank you. I just can't thank you all enough. And the work, it's got to keep going.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Griffin. Any other miscellaneous comments? All right, I'm going to ask Attorney Robinson to help me join the meeting. It's first time, so I need a little assistance.
There's a couple of ways you can do it.
Right.
You can ask for a motion to that effect, and it has to be second, then you vote on it. Or the other thing is, because you got the power of the chair, you can say, if there's no objection, I declare this meeting adjourned. Then now, if somebody does object, then you have to go through a motion and all of that.
Well, I'll declare a motion.
So you want somebody to move for the adjournment?
So
No.
moved.
Oh, okay. So
I second that motion.
Moved and supported, then you can ask for a vote.
Who to support it? I'll ask for a vote.
All in favor?
All in favor? Yes, or
Aye.
preferably raise your hand so people can see on who might be viewing. Looks like you've got a majority.
All right. And any other official words?
Oh, the meeting is adjourned.
Meeting is adjourned. All right.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good
You all have
job,
a good
Director
night.
Houston.
Nice job.
Good
Thank you.
job.
Good job.
Thanks,
You all have a good
everybody.
evening. Thank you so
You
much.
too.
You got it.
Be safe. Happy holidays.
Happy
Happy holidays,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Yeah.